Now, many of you will know that EV makers like Nio, due to the restrictions that we saw under the Biden administration, they ended up resolving to making or producing their own chips. I mean, they've always wanted to make or develop their own chips in-house because they knew that was going to grow or increase their gross margins, right? Building or producing most things that they need to build their cars, it obviously has got a good thing, and that is to increase gross margins, because then they don't have to pay a third party or another company to source their chips. And Nvidia was one of the companies that an EV maker like Nio was procuring autonomous driving chips, which you will know that prior to Nio using or deploying or building their own chip, which they are currently using on their latest models, they were using Nvidia Orin chips, right, for autonomous driving, which I suppose it was good. But US kept on obviously capping, of course, or restricting. But US under the Biden, it started from the Biden administration, right? They started restricting, I think it was the H100 chips, which of course EV makers or tech companies in China were using these chips to for their research and development, developing their technology, latest technology onto their cars. And seeing that happening, it led into, of course, China once again emphasizing the point, encouraging the local tech companies to start thinking about making their own chips. And Nio, good news is that it's one of the companies that today they have successfully deployed and are mass producing the autonomous driving chip, which they are currently using on their Nio main brand models. Yes, Onvo, Firefly, it's still using third-party chips, or they're still using for autonomous driving. They are still using chips from other companies. Onvo, in fact, it's still using Nvidia chips, whilst Firefly, it's using a local Chinese chip producer for the chips that, whilst the Firefly is currently using chips from a local Chinese firm, right? Which is something that is still not that bad. But Nio has said that they plan to have, of course, Onvo also using in-house developed chips. Now, the reason why I'm giving you this chip story is because Nvidia CEO just flagged his disappointment on China. This comes after China has urged Chinese tech companies to not buy Nvidia chips. This is making the Nvidia CEO to not be that happy with them, with China, and showing or highlighting that it's a bit disappointed, right? But part of the reason why China has been or is going to this move is because of the current tensions that are still there between obviously China and the US, right? I mean, like I said, it did not start now under the Trump administration. Even under the Biden administration, H100 Nvidia chips were restricted to the shipment into China. And now under the Trump administration, the H20s Nvidia chips are restricted, or there was a point in time where they were restricted to be shipped into China, right? And this is something that led into, of course, China realizing that they need to find ways to develop their own chips. And like I said, thank God Nio was one of the companies that started producing, or that become successful at producing or mass producing their own chips that they use into the car, which is something that is very, very good. And China doing or saying this, it's good and it's bad, especially in the short term, right? Because for EV makers like, or for EV companies like Onvo, this simply means that Onvo, in the interim, they would have to find an alternative supplier that they will buy the chips from. That's if they did not procure enough, or that's if they don't have even a local supplier as yet. Because with Onvo, I can tell you, guarantee you that for the autonomous driving, they were still using, or they are still using Nvidia chips, right? And China coming out and stopping companies or urging their local companies, tech companies, including Nio, to buy chips, to not buy chips from Nvidia. It means that now Nio must also quickly come up with a plan to make sure that they've got enough supplies of their chips that they are using onto their Onvo cars, right, for autonomous driving capabilities or to support autonomous driving. They must fast track that project, which is something that is very, very interesting. We don't know the plan of Nio, obviously, with regards to, of course, the autonomous driving chips of Onvo, because we know they are still depending on Nvidia. But in the near future, I can guarantee you that Nio will also be mass producing the chips that they are using on their Onvo cars, which that not only will it be good for Nio, but which that is also going to be a very good gross margin booster for Onvo, which is something that we look forward to. You will know that with the Shenji NX9031 chip, which is the autonomous driving chip that Nio is using for their main brand cars, it is saving them like $1,380, which is absolutely great, and it gives us the confidence that, look, even when it comes or when it goes to their Onvo sub brand, they are going to save quite significant, or they are going to save some money when they deploy or when they build and deploy the chips in-house, which is absolutely great. I just don't know how many cars or how many new energy vehicles are using Nvidia chips in China, but I can tell you it's not only Nio. I think Xpeng still got some models, or still got some models that are using Nvidia chips. Leo, I think all of their cars for now they are using Nvidia chips, which this again, it's not gonna be that good for them, especially if China becomes very firm in terms of imposing or making sure that Chinese EV makers or Chinese tech firms are not buying chips from Nvidia. To show how serious this is, Nvidia shares are down 3% today, and this comes after, like I said, we are hearing this from China, talking about their local tech firms not buying Nvidia chips, not going for Nvidia chips for their technology or for their development of their products, which is something that is, I suppose, not good, right, for Nvidia. Even for the Chinese tech companies that were fully dependent on Nvidia's technology or chips for their products, I think it's once again, it's a place where China needs to take, or Chinese tech firm needs to take it seriously to develop their own chips. Chinese tech firm needs to take this seriously and develop their chips in-house or find local suppliers where they will, of course, buy these chips. I can tell you now, China for Nvidia, honestly, there's a lot, there are billions and billions of revenue that Nvidia generates from China due to them supplying, or due to Nvidia supplying chips in China. But these conflicts or these tensions between the US and China continue making, of course, countries like China wanting to, of course, hedge against the impacts that might come with Trump's restrictions or Trump's punishment, or sanctions in the future, tariffs be it, which is something that is really, really interesting. So tell me what you think about this, man. When I read this, I thought of coming to tell you or give you the latest developments about this. I think it's high time that Nio also goes in and aggressively invest into producing chips for their own sub-brand and not depend on to Nvidia for their autonomous driving chip. But anyways, let me leave it here. Tell me what you think. Blue Sky is coming. Long term will win. New stock price still trading at $7.30 as I'm doing this video. I believe that Blue Sky is coming. Long term will win. Those that are persevering will be rewarded. Chinese stocks are not reacting, or are not overall or general, they are not reacting that bad based on this news, and I suppose the market is seeing west side, or it's seeing a worst case scenario for Nvidia and not for the Chinese EV firms, because they've already started plans. Even Leo, though they are still using Nvidia chips, they've highlighted that they will be tapping off their autonomous driving chip, in-house built autonomous driving chip. But we'll see what happens in the future, and that shows you that China is prepared. But anyways, like, share, subscribe, tell me what you think about this. I'll see you on the next one, and God bless you all.